If you're struggling with debt, we're here to let you know you have options to find relief. Take the first step today with a free debt evaluation from Achieve My Freedom. It's quick, easy, confidential, and there's absolutely no commitment. Just provide some basic information, including the amount you owe, and we'll handle the rest of the work for you. In just minutes, you can see how much you'll be saving every month. Achieve My Freedom has helped thousands of people find debt relief, and they can help you too. So what are you waiting for? Get started now, and in minutes, you could have a plan that will put you in charge of your debt.